You're watching Spirit. Hello to you and thank you so much for joining us. As usual, we're discussing spirituality and your connection to your personal deity. My guest today is Khaya Dlanga. He is an award-winning and accomplished advertising, communication and marketing professional. Khaya, such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You must know that I'm very eager to please. I'll go out of my way for my guests. So in preparation for this discussion, I checked out your Twitter.
Yeah.
And I saw that you were commenting on the size of your hands. And you, said, and you said, my hands are so big. And you showed pictures. And then you said the caption, he's got the whole world in his hand.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me bring that home. You can literally have the whole world in your hands. But talk to me about let's talk about your world and all that you do. It's been such an amazing career. I didn't mention in the intro that you're also an author, and there's so many things that you've done. Tell me about what really drives you.
You know, it's always such a funny, because I never know.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that. And I always hear people say, and I admire people who can say that this is the one thing that drives me, because I wish I had that. But what is very interesting to me is that I spoke to my mother, because every now and then my mother will kind of tell me a story. And she does this, especially on my birthdays. And she says, yes, mntana yazi dakuba awuziqhathi mntanami yazi ndikhumbula usemncinci usengumntana. And so she told me this story about how I had these cousins in ezilalini, because my cousins, they lived in Mdantsane, you know, baba cleany, you know, the beautiful, bafika ngemoto. And you know, when they get there, I'm about 3 years old or 2 years old. And what I would do is that I'd wash myself, make sure I'm clean, I'm just grabbing a Vaseline and put as much Vaseline as I can on me. And then I would hang out with them because I thought, you know, that I'd be accepted. And then they would take me to the big city with them. That's what I thought they would do as a kid. And so my mom then thought, and then there's another story that she told me about how I had also when they came, when my cousins with mine had come to the village, and I'd sit in the car and pretend I was driving. And then I would call her inside the car, and I'd tell her and press all the buttons. And when they left, when my uncle left with his car, I would say to her, no, I call her auntie because I never called her mama. I'd say, auntie, ungakhali aunt, ngenye imini ndiza eGoli nam ndikukhwelise kwami imoto.
Wow.
So I think as a child, there are certain things that I think God puts in you, or like that in your soul, that you cannot really just say, you can't describe and you can't define. They just happen to be there in you, and you just don't know you have them. And I think for me, I just made that connection when my mother said it, because if I look at my life and where I come from, I really shouldn't be who I am. And so the only definition, the only explanation I have is that it's something that God has put in there to have some kind of drive that I can't explain.
I think something else that's God-given is your incredible sense of humor. I mean, we read on social media, on Twitter to be exact, your humorous tweets, your captions, your pictures, but also some incredibly thought-provoking questions that you ask. You always start debates, you always interrogate and push the boundaries to get us to think. I think that's something that's just in you, over and above your profession. What do you attribute that to?
I think I'll tell you, like, one of the reasons I started asking questions, I was actually for a very, I wanted to get a lot more people to feel inclusive and included on Twitter. And because I realized that a lot of people found it very intimidating. So what I started doing is that I'd ask very questions that you can't get wrong, that no one can tease you for answering. So if I were to say, for example, what was your school song? And no one can fault you for having a school song.
What's the best thing a stranger has ever said to you? That was one of your questions.
You know, and no one can fault you for responding to that. And for me, it was more of a sense of trying to get people more comfortable. So sometimes someone says something to me and then I think about it. And one of the most heartbreaking moments, I think, when I was asking one of those questions, I really thought people would give me the most positive, optimistic responses to this question. And I asked, what is the one thing that you've always wanted to say to your parents that you've never said? I could not believe the responses that people gave me. There were things like, I will never forgive you. Why did you love my siblings more than you loved me? What did I ever do to you? You know, or things, some would say, Mom, why did you never leave Dad? Why did you stick around? So they were asking, they were saying this really hit, and then I realized how broken people are out there, and specifically the relationships with their parents, because my assumption was that people were just going to be so happy,
I love you, mommy. I love you, daddy.
You've done some great things for me. But you realize that people have maybe been broken by their parents, and their parents have no idea. And I think sometimes it's because parents thought that is how the way parenting was, how parenting was supposed to be done. Yeah.
And so how do you then process or filter some of that, I don't want to call it negative information, but some of the devastating things that happen in life, not only to you, but to others as well? How do you make sense of the world?
Well, I think the way I make sense of the world for me is the world is what it is. Yeah. And we have to accept it as it is, and then we have to make our way according to how it is. So, because we cannot, the world is never going to be how you wish it to be, and it can't. Even the Bible promises us that it's not going to be like how we want it to be. You know, as someone who does read the Bible, well, occasionally, I know that, like in Isaiah, it actually talks about, it says, when you walk through the river, you will not be swept away. When you walk through the fire, it doesn't say if.
Yeah.
It's not an if, it is when.
Yeah.
So no one ever wishes to walk through the river or go through a fire, right? So that's why I'm saying that the world will never be as we wish it to be, but we can live it better than we found it, or we can live people better than we found them. And I think for me, that is my intention. And so when I ask those questions and people let out and they vent out, it's also I think a measure of my empathy, I think, for myself. Because when I see that, I just found how devastated I am by those things. And that, you know, you realize how many people are just walking out there just broken. And we can't just use these social media spaces just to be vicious and break each other. And it's so easy to do that. And that's what people do. And maybe people do that precisely because they're broken. And there is no outlet for them to find a sense of love and comfort and optimism and positivity. And if most people are negative, people feel that, and it's what gets them retweets. Yeah. It's what gets them recognition. Yeah. So that's what they'll do.
But I also love the way that you boldly share your faith. You know, you'll look for songs. Where do I find these Xhosa hymns, etc.? Or you'll go out and say, you know, this is what I feel God thinks about homosexuality. I think it's neither here nor there for him, that he loves the individual. Yeah. Or you'll share your views about your faith, which is something that people don't do often on Twitter. It's either they go to the extreme and they're Bible bashing and this and that, or they're on the other side where they're, you know, agnostic or atheist, etc. But very few people say, hey, look, I'm a Christian. I'm not going to shove it down your throat, but I want you to know that I love, you know, my faith. Yeah.
I think my view on that is that Christ was very empathetic. Yeah. I don't think that he was this, and it's interesting because I had a birthday recently. And,
happy belated.
So on my birthday, I had there were lots of people on my birthday, and some people say to me, oh, there was so-and-so at your birthday. I wonder why you'd have that kind of person at your party, these kinds of people. And then I thought, and usually these people are because you are this. Yeah. They describe me as because you're this kind of person. Therefore, you can't hang around with certain kinds of people. I was like, you know what, guys? Jesus was hanging out with prostitutes, tax collectors. Yeah. You know, there was nobody he was not hanging out with. So who am I, you know, to think that there are certain people that I should not be around? And another thing for me is that no one is one person, one thing. Each person has lots of different facets to who they are. You know, the one day, you know, I could be out there turning up at Taboo, okay, and then later I could be going to church, you know, and or giving encouraging words to somebody, you know, about the other, and so to always try and define each person as one thing, as if there are no other complexities to who they are, is actually quite ridiculous, and I think is also hypocritical, because we are all not one thing.
Yeah.
Nobody's one thing.
And I think what's important, and this is something that I live in my life as well, is there's no separation between the profane and that which is sacred. You know, so for me, brushing my teeth is just as holy as going to church. Going out with friends and doing this is just as holy, because God is in it all. And I mean, the Bible does say, do it all as unto the Lord. So hanging out here and chatting to you gives me joy. It helps me to find meaning in life. And that is like saying, oh, thanks, Dad. You know, high five, Jesus. You know, this is great. Which I think is something that we could learn more as a people, because we are either or. You know, I'm Methodist.
Yes.
When you're Anglican. Therefore, not same WhatsApp group. You know, how do you then, you know, have your faith at least manifest in your everyday life? To say, when I'm at work or at church, how do I express my faith?
You know, I think sometimes you don't know that you're actually expressing your faith.
Yeah.
And somehow it does its own thing. For example, I remember years ago, so I'd usually, even now and then, even now it still happens, or someone just randomly calls me, just for no reason. Call them, they'll call me and we'll chat 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. And then at the end of the phone call, but there was nothing particular that is discussed. And someone's like, I knew I'd feel better after talking to you. And then you'd be like, but we didn't really talk about anything specific. But it's because someone is going through something. And I'll give you an example. I used to hear that there's lots of drugs, for example, in advertising. I'd never seen drugs in advertising my entire life. So I was like, this is very false. This cannot be true. And I think I must have been in the industry for maybe 5 years when I saw the first and last time I ever saw like drugs being taken in front of me, and that was, you know, cocaine. And obviously I was sitting there, I was like,
this is really
my
happening.
eyes, I was like, you know, where your eyes are, is this actually happening? So they passed the thing, you know, and I remember being so nervous that I didn't touch. I couldn't.
What
touch,
do I do?
I
Do I
couldn't touch
listen?
the thing, and I was like, I'm not even breathing. So because the next person
just
next
in
to
case
me,
you get one mistake.
you know, grabs the thing and they go, and I'm like, I cannot believe this. And then I thought the reason that I'd never been exposed to that was probably because there's something in me that says to people that we can't do this in front of this person. So I think I don't think I expressed my spirituality or my that much, but I do feel maybe it was how I was behaving, how I conduct, even though I was, you know, being stupid and silly, making jokes and like everybody else, and you know, talking about, you know, girls. So what I'm saying is that, but I think maybe how you do it says something about something that is in you.
Sure.
So I do feel that maybe that's that. There's another great story a friend of mine told me years ago about this missionary. And I always think this is the best way to preach the gospel. So this missionary who went to some island, and this missionary goes to this island, you know, white people haven't been there, or the colonizers hadn't been there yet. He's the only white person there. Shout out to Wakanda colonizers.
For life.
So this guy goes there to this island, and he's a doctor. So he builds a school, he does, you know, and he heals people, medication, and then he dies. Say like about 15 or 20 years later after he dies, like a group of missionaries arrive and they're preaching about the gospel, and they say, have you heard about Jesus Christ? And they say, what? Jesus? No. But the guy you're describing is exactly like this guy.
Wow.
We buried him here about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. That's the guy. And so I feel that sometimes how you preach the gospel is by being you, and not by saying repent or you will go to hell. Sometimes the best way to actually preach the gospel is just how you live your life.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, going forward in the many decisions that you've yet to take, the direction of your career and such, you know, what role does God's guidance at least take? I mean, is this something you would pray about? Would you call your mom, you know, and say, Mama, I just am caught between these two decisions. What do I do? Where do I go? How do you then make the right choice?
I think it's very terrible because I don't call my mom. I usually consult very few people when I have to make major decisions, and I think I pray a lot and I consult God a lot when I'm in trouble.
Bail me out.
Like,
I could use a little help here.
I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. And it's the kind of prayer where it's not even like you're not even praying. I'm not even going like, you know, God help me and do this. It's like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
What's going on? Come on, Lord.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that kind of voice. Like I can't even pray. And I always find that usually in those silent moments when there's nothing, you kind of, you know, the dust kind of settles and God kind of, you know, gives you some kind of way. But I always find that and there was a time where I used to do the exact opposite, where I would not pray about a thing when I was in trouble because I felt like I am using God as an ATM. Because I'm like, oh, now I'm in trouble. I need this from God. And then what I would do in the reverse, so when something great happens, then I would pray and praise Him and thank Him, you know that. But the thing is, He knew I was in trouble. So anyway, in the first place, He fixed it.
Yeah.
So it's not because it's something that I did.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your future plans, what you are and are not praying about.
Yes.
What do you envisage for yourself in the next couple of years?
You know, one of the scariest things to say, I think everybody's like, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and they were saying, you know what I never want to say is that, God, let your will be done.
No, that's a very dangerous prayer because anything could happen.
Yes, like you don't want that. But I think there's someone who said that if you want to make God laugh, tell Him your plans. So I don't think I have many plans, but I do think I know the kind of person I'd like to be. And I'm not always successful. In fact, most of the time, I think I fail at being the kind of person that I'd like to be. And my hope for the future is that I continue to be the kind of person that, you know, I'd like to be and I'd like to be proud of.
Yeah.
And
save people like the ambulance. Okay. Okay. You happy? Okay, so you would like to work in the future to be the kind of person that you'd hope to be?
And I think for me that is probably the best things that any of us can do. Because I do feel that the kind of person you are then helps you achieve the things that you should be achieving in life. And to become the person that you're supposed to be. And I think for me that's just my one true desire. But at the moment I'm I've written a book, I've submitted it to my publisher.
It will be a third.
Like 2 days ago. It's going to be my third one.
Oh my goodness.
So it's coming out in September.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I'm doing right now. And then career-wise, you know, I'm still working how I'm working, and we will see, you know, what happens, you know, in the future, because the world is an uncertain place. And suppose the one certainty is that, you know, we have someone to look up to and to guide us.
Indeed.
Even if sometimes we feel that He's guiding us towards places we don't want Him to guide us to. Yeah.
Well, as He continues to guide you in this journey called life, we wish you everything of the best. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
All
Thank
the
you.
best to you going forward, and all the best to you in your journey and in everything that you do. Thank you so much for staying with us. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's do it again. Close it again.
The closing. Okay.
That was so good.
Right? Okay. Well, as He continues to guide you in this journey of life, we wish you everything of the best. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. And thank you also for joining us. We wish you everything of the best. God bless you. Thank you once again.